This is Center Stage, putting your firm in the spotlight by highlighting business owners and other industry experts to help take your firm to the next level. Hey everyone, and welcome to Center Stage. I'm your host, John Henson, and this week, talking about one of the most basic facets of your marketing strategy, and that is your marketing plan. We're going to talk about what they are, how to build one, and probably just everything in between. And to do that, bringing back someone who has been on the show before, and they have a lot of experience doing this, since I'm guessing it's probably a big part of their, day-to-day job, on top of, not just for the law firm that he works for, but also for his own organization, Marketing for Justice, which I will have him tell you a little bit about before we wrap up today. But I'm excited to welcome Dan Bryan back to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, John. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So for people who didn't check out your previous episode, which we did probably, I think it was sometime last year, let everybody know a little bit about who you are, what your background is, and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Dan Bryan. I'm the digital marketing director for a mid-sized personal injury firm in North Carolina. So we serve clients across the state, but we also handle mass tort cases nationwide, that sort of thing. And so I've been in the digital marketing game for, probably 16 years now or so. I started back in the agency side of things. And so, I kind of have an understanding of that side of the table as well. And, got into legal marketing about 5 years ago or so and have loved every minute. That's a lie. I've loved most minutes. But in any case, I've enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it enough. And in fact, really liked connecting with other legal marketers, other agency folks like John, for instance, like yourself, that I started a online marketing education platform for legal marketers, specifically called Marketing for Justice. So that's my passion project, but my full-time, my 9 to 5, which we all know is so much more than that, of course, is working for a mid-sized personal injury firm and doing a lot of marketing planning, like we're going to talk about here today.
Yeah. So, just kind of broadly speaking, what is a marketing plan? What does it look like? Why even have one in the first place?
Yeah, for sure. So I think a marketing plan, the best way to look at it is basically just a roadmap. And it's a roadmap that outlines your priorities, the channels that you're going to be using to market your firm, the various budgets that are associated with those channels. You can get even more granular and break down within those channels the specific strategies you're going to be using, because there will be, different strategies within each channel. So, let's say you're looking at Facebook, you're going to have your organic posting, which is going out, those non-paid posts. You're also perhaps, depending on your budget, depending on your firm and your objectives, going to have paid advertising on Facebook. So you can get as granular as you want, or keep it as top level as you want. But it's basically a roadmap that's going to lay out for you what you're going to go after in the year ahead, as well as what you're going to spend. And most importantly, I would say, what you're really aiming to accomplish with those channels, so that as you're going forward, and especially when it comes around to budget planning next year, you have a sense of how you did relative to the benchmarks that you've established previously, so that you understand kind of what you ought to prioritize going forward and where you need to be allocating those budgets. So it's basically a roadmap.
Got it. So you mentioned a specific word, channels. For people who aren't familiar with kind of the marketing world, maybe they're just, kind of trying to do this on their own. What is a marketing channel? What are some examples of that?
Yeah, great question. It's like when I talk about what I do to my grandparents, they have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. So it's always good to pull back and kind of talk about what you're talking about. And so when I say channel, when I say channel, I really mean the, for lack of a better term, the buckets that your marketing efforts are divided into. So, within our day-to-day marketing for law firms, we have a number of different quote unquote channels or buckets. And so those might be your website, they might be your blog, they might be social media. And within that, of course, you have various channels, which might be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, the different platforms within that social media marketing channel. You also have paid advertising. Some people are doing, pay-per-click, PPC, or, advertising, with video on YouTube. It's really everything under the sun divided into those buckets. And for some people, SEO might be a thing that they invest
Yeah.
in, and so that's another channel. So your organic marketing, that kind of thing. Podcasting, if your firm has a podcast, which I highly recommend, and I know you do too.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out for Spotlight Branding; they do a great job with that. But all of those, everything under the sun that you're doing within marketing, it's essentially a way of categorizing that so that you can kind of, you don't miss the forest for the trees, so to speak. You have everything divided into buckets that you can then, kind of look at specific objectives, look at specific budgets, look at specific outcomes. And it's just a nice way of categorizing things so that you can kind of divide and conquer when you're putting together a marketing plan.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I know just thinking about how we do it on our end, we have our channels like digital ads, events that we sponsor.
Yeah.
And then, to your point, podcast appearances or, the blog articles that we post on other people's websites, all that kind of
Yep.
stuff, like
Email marketing is another one I
Yep.
missed. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So just any, like you said, bucket is a good term for it, that just kind of differentiates each kind of marketing. And then within that, you can have, buckets within buckets and make like a little, Russian nesting doll of marketing and all that. But,
Yeah.
I for me, and thinking about someone who, at least back before I was really into marketing and had no real context for this, hearing all of that can kind of sound intimidating. I've got all these channels. Okay, I've got to figure out where my budget goes and all that. How do you then, recommend someone maybe even organize their plan? Do you do it by month or by quarter? Do you do it by each, channel? How have you set yours up? What have you discovered works for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I'm a marketer, so I love a good spreadsheet.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would always recommend, regardless of what your level of sophistication is with Excel or Google Sheets, I do recommend putting everything in sort of a visualized spreadsheet where you can see, by row what the various channels are that we just talked about. So what each bucket is that you're going to spend your time, money, and effort on. And then, with your columns, set those up as time periods. So like you said, you can do it by month, you can do it by quarter. I kind of recommend looking at both. So making sure that you're, tracking the budgets you're going to allocate toward each channel by month, but also, evaluating those in chunks of 3, so to speak, with that quarterly idea, so that, you're able to kind of look at the big picture. Because I think what a lot of people lose sight of in online marketing, particularly when they're trying to organize a marketing plan, and most importantly, when they're evaluating how that marketing plan worked over a certain amount of time, there's a lot of real-time analysis that folks are obsessed with in marketing, and it's interesting, it's great. I'm glad that you can pop into Google Ads Manager or Facebook Ads Manager and check out, or Google Analytics for that matter, and check out what's happening literally up to the minute.
Yeah.
But you lose sight of overall trends, and you lose sight of long-term performance that way. And especially when it comes to, certain channels that may take some time to optimize and, position for better performance, SEO being one of them, even Google
Mhm.
Ads, because it takes a while to get a campaign kind of locked and loaded and running like a well-oiled machine. I do recommend that you look at things, when it comes to a marketing plan, at a little bit longer time frame. So, I like your suggestion of quarterly. I think you should be paying attention to the monthly metrics and looking at what you're going to be doing each month. I mean, it's great, when you have, a marketing plan that you can say specifically, like, here's what I'm going to be doing this month. Here's what I'm going to be focusing on. That's great. And especially, in areas of law that may have some seasonality to it. That's a
Yeah.
great thing. So if you're in business law and you have budget planning at the end of the year, make sure that, your marketing plan is appropriate to that cycle. But I like being able to look at what's going on a monthly basis, but also knowing kind of what the game plan is each quarter. And I think dividing the year into 4 chunks is a really good way of looking at it, and it keeps things a little bit more manageable as well, because a day-to-day marketing plan is going to be that spreadsheet's going to get ugly real fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I track a lot of our content metrics on a weekly basis, and I have just this massive spreadsheet with, like, 10 different tabs of each different channel,
Mhm.
and just all that data, and it can get very big and very messy, if you're not keeping it organized. And so, but yes, quarterly, I
Totally.
agree. And and it also helps you, especially if you do a lot of things that aren't ongoing. Maybe you sponsor a couple of specific events in the community, every now and then.
Yep.
Those are going to be costs that aren't going to show up in certain quarters, and so you can make sure that you're allocating your marketing budget, you know to the best that you can, so that you're not caught
Yeah.
off guard by something later in the year.
Yeah, and one thing, I agree with everything that you just said, and I think the spreadsheet really is the way to go, regardless of, like I said, your comfort with Excel. I've been doing marketing, like I said, for 16 or so years, and I'm a novice when it comes to, Excel and Google Sheets. I probably know the bare minimum of what's required to get by in this industry. But that being said, I would encourage folks when they're mapping out their marketing plan, and particularly when they're calculating budget allocation and looking at where you're going to spend what. I would highly recommend that you make use of the formulas in those spreadsheet programs, because they
Oh yeah.
can really help you kind of plug and play, and it's actually kind of fun, even for someone like me that's not a true numbers guy.
Yeah.
I know, shocker. But you can kind of plug and play and say, okay, if I allocate this to this, by having those formulas in place, you're going to be able to see immediately how that's going to affect other areas of your marketing plan and what you might have available to play with in terms of budget. So it's just kind of a fun tip. It's like you can make a static spreadsheet, and that's great too. And if that's what you're comfortable with, more power to you. But even just some basic formulas, percentage calculations, and that sort of thing within that spreadsheet is going to make your job infinitely easier as you go forward and make adjustments. The other thing I think that speaks to too, and I'm sorry to kind of get off topic here, but
Oh, you're
I
good.
think you really need to take a dynamic approach when it comes to your marketing plan. So just because, we go through at the end of the year. So for me, November and December is really dedicated to planning for the year ahead. And it depends kind of on what fiscal cycle you're on, or whatever. But when you're planning, when you're outlining your marketing plan for the year ahead, or by quarter, or whatever it may be, um, don't don't box yourself in by thinking that you're committing to something that is hard and fast. Like know that a marketing plan, is a plan. It is a roadmap, but it's okay to take detours along the way. It's
Mhm.
okay to adjust, and based on performance, even like as you're looking back over the past quarter, if you see that a particular channel or one of those buckets didn't perform as well as you might have hoped, or really just as well as is necessary to justify that spend, you can reallocate. And having those formulas in play in those spreadsheets is going to make that so much easier as you are kind of like on the fly readjusting and reallocating spend, and that kind of thing. So it is dynamic, and
Yeah.
I would encourage your listeners to not think of a marketing plan as a set in stone biblical tablet that they have to
Yeah.
adhere to. It's not like that.
Yeah, it's really about, like you said, just informing you, and helping you make those decisions. And obviously you're going to have all that data in there. And how then, I guess, do you use that data to make decisions on, hey, we should, okay, this is performing really well,
Yeah.
let's do more of this, versus this other thing that's not performing as well, we should drop this. How do you then make
Yep.
those decisions based on all of that really objective data?
Yeah. Well, when you set out to put together your marketing plan, we've talked a lot about the specific channels, we've talked about the strategies, we've talked about the budgets that go along with those. Make sure that within that marketing plan that you're looking at, in a spreadsheet or otherwise kind of visual format, make
Mhm.
sure that you're leaving room to record the outcomes associated with each of those channels. So every week, it may be in your case every month for others, and definitely every quarter. Make sure that you're recording the outcomes associated with those various channels and the spend
Yeah.
that you're allocating to those, the spend and the time. So,
Yeah.
for most channels, the outcome that you're going to be measuring for a law firm, or as a law firm, is going to be your leads. So, how many qualified leads did you bring in? what percentage of those leads or how many of those leads did you actually convert into signed cases or retain clients, that kind of thing. The other thing I would say up front, before you even start to craft this marketing plan, before you're in the trenches putting it together, take a step back and really think long and hard about what your KPIs are, or those key performance indicators that you're going to be holding yourself accountable to measure the performance of your marketing plan going forward. So like I just said, for most legal marketers, whether they're in-house marketers or managing partners or attorneys that are managing their own marketing, we're going to be paying attention to, of course, at the end of the day, signed cases. That's going to be most important. Signed cases. It's also going to be the leads, though, however, that fuel those. So the percentage of qualified intakes maybe that you're bringing in, or the qualified cases that you're evaluating. And then also there are other metrics that you may want to break it down into, such as referrals. So it may be how many referrals you're generating from your referral campaign. That might be an email campaign that you're focused on. You might have, external outreach associated with those referrals. But there are so many different metrics that you need to be paying attention to. I would say, though, don't overcomplicate it. When you're looking at KPIs, really try to narrow down to the 3 or 4 or maybe 5 top line metrics that are going to really move the needle for your business, so that you don't lose sight of what's really important. But yeah, I don't know if I really answered your question. I'm sorry, but I do think that before you start, and when you're looking at, how do you fine tune your marketing plan? How are you making those adjustments? It all comes down to data. And what's really important is that in advance, you've identified the KPIs that you're going to hold yourself accountable to and use to measure the effectiveness of that plan.
Yeah, and I think you did, and maybe I ask it a little bit differently, just to make sure. And this is more just me being curious, marketer to marketer. Let's say that you want to run some Google ads. All right, you have $1,000 a month for simple numbers budgeted towards that. There's a lot of low hanging fruit there that you believe exists. Should be some easy leads, should be some easy conversions, but you run it for 3 months and you don't get a lot. The things that you do get are just people who you're not even sure, honestly, how they even figured out how to click on the ad. They're just so unqualified.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that out there.
It's people looking for a dentist and they somehow landed on a law firm, and it just doesn't make any sense. Meanwhile, in that same 3-month period, you have, you're doing really well on LinkedIn. You're generating a bunch of leads on LinkedIn. At what point do you just say, Google ads just isn't working for me? Maybe we should double down on what we're doing on LinkedIn, or just in any other kind of situation like that. Is it still around the KPIs, or just like, is it a little bit deeper than that, where it's just like, how do you convince someone, hey, this thing just isn't working for us based on our budget for it, but maybe we should go this direction instead?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and the numbers don't lie. So like you said, if you're not getting the results that you need on PPC, it's going to become pretty clear pretty quickly that particular channel is not working. And in that case, if LinkedIn is exploding for you, then it may make sense to reallocate that budget to that particular channel. That makes sense. What I would caution marketers about, though, is not jumping to conclusions so quickly, because digital marketing is ever evolving. And 1 month of bad performance on Google ads may be more attributable to a change that Google itself has made in its algorithm, and it's kind of still working through its own process of ironing out the kinks in that new algorithm, or whatever it may be. And your marketing is going to need some time to absorb that change, and you need to give it a little bit more time to see where that performance is going to go. So I would say, don't judge a particular channel's performance too quickly. Make sure you give it some time, give it some space to breathe. Oh, that sounds really like new agey, but give it some space to breathe. Understand that these things are going to take time to play out, and really, like, what I would really suggest is that you look for patterns. And so if you're an in-house marketer and you're managing Google ads, give it 3 months, and then take the case to your managing partner and say, hey, you know what? The first month was down. I gave it a little bit of time because these things take time to play out. And, sure enough, month 2, month 3 didn't do much better. It may be time to consider reallocating to LinkedIn where things are going really, really well. The same thing is true in terms of looking at patterns for channels that do perform very well. Like that LinkedIn example that you used, maybe it just blew up in the first month and you got a ton of qualified leads from it. That's great. But wait until, month 2, give it another few weeks, see if that trend continues, because
Yeah.
you really don't want to be jumping around from channel to channel too quickly, because
Right.
these channels, by their very nature, they need time to sort of marinate.
Yeah.
And the spend that you put into them takes time to really kick in and really kind of level off. It's not going to be until month 3 or month 4 or maybe even month 5 in terms of some channels like organic search and SEO. You're not going to see those trends or those patterns emerge until you've given it time to really sink in. So that's kind of the advice I would give there.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's a little bit easier when it's an ongoing thing like Google Ads, LinkedIn, where you can get results daily. Where it becomes difficult
Yeah.
is like if you sponsor some events, or maybe you're sponsoring some sort of community event, or if your firm does some B2B stuff, maybe you're sponsoring a bigger conference or something like that. It can be difficult to gauge the effectiveness of an event because it's an annual thing.
Yeah.
Maybe, and even you even can't even compare 1 year to 1 year. You almost have to go at least 3 years and to
Yep.
develop that pattern. But it's also not as simple as, okay, well, I got 50 leads the first year, 45 the second year, 30 the third year. Is it because, the same people are attending the event? Is it because attendance is lower in subsequent years?
Yeah.
COVID screwed all this up too, made it more difficult because now you have
Just a bit.
virtual events and, in person, and it's hybrid, and the virtual stuff isn't conducive to vendor relationships yet. And so there's just so many factors to it. One other thing I wanted to ask you though, and I'm, you're in a mid-sized firm that have multiple offices, right?
Yep.
I know a lot of our clients have this. I know there's a lot out there who have this. How do you manage a marketing plan for a firm that has multiple locations? Is it just all one big budget and everyone, just has equal share? How do you how do you divide all that up? Is it just separate marketing plans? What is it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. For us, most of our operations are centralized in one location, regardless of having multiple, say Google business profiles that represent
Mm,
each of those different market areas and different office locations. So for us, we're really looking a little bit more broad. And so the marketing plan is really an umbrella that covers all of our locations. And we don't do a ton to separate or distinguish those individual locations, except maybe for, like you said, in-person events that we might do that correspond to a certain location or to a certain group of attorneys that work out of a specific location, that sort of thing.
mhm.
For us, though, in terms of online, I find especially it's very different. Like what you were saying with in-person events, or say like a mailing campaign, direct mail.
Yeah.
Those things or even like TV in different local markets. That's going to be the kind of thing that you definitely need to separate out and account for in your marketing plan. So make sure that you have those broken out by location, because the spend associated with those and the time and effort associated with those strategies are going to be different based on where you're at. For us, however, and for me personally, because I am focused on digital, it's all pretty well wrapped up in the same blanket. And within Google Ads, for instance, like where I'm allocating budget on a weekly basis, will vary by market, but it's something that can be controlled at that top level, campaign level. So for digital and online advertising and online marketing, I think that it's relatively straightforward in terms of keeping it sort of top level, and you really only need one line item, and you can reallocate things as necessary. But to your point, the boots on the ground marketing, the in-person events, the speaking engagements, the networking events, the direct mail, TV, radio, those kinds of things are going to be it's going to be really important to break those up by location, because that's just the very nature of them. It's not like a one size fits all or blanket plan. You're really going into those specific communities and doing very localized work. And so you really should account for that in your marketing plan, I think. So that's a great question.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I think I got everything out on my end that I needed. Was there anything else that people should know about marketing plans?
I think the one thing I would say, and we've gotten into so much great stuff here today. I hope it was helpful,
Yeah.
and I've learned some things even from you, as I always do. But the one thing I would encourage marketers to do, again, whether you're an in-house marketer working for an attorney, or you are an attorney managing your own marketing, is tap into your network. And so it may be connections you've made on LinkedIn. It may be attorneys that are referral partners and have their own firms as well that they're marketing for. It may be other in-house marketers that you meet in a shameless plug group like Marketing for Justice, for instance.
Yeah.
But when it comes time to planning for your marketing in the year ahead, connect with other marketers in your sphere. And if they're outside your market area and they're not a direct competitor, you would be surprised by how willing folks are in many cases to really open the books and show you kind of behind the scenes how they're planning, how they're allocating budget. And you guys at Spotlight, John, I know you guys do the yearly legal marketing trends report, and
Yeah.
paying attention to those trends, hearing it in the personal experience of other marketers out there, what they're seeing, what's been most effective for them. Take advantage of that. The same thing if you work with an agency. So if you're working with an agency like Spotlight, be proactive and ask them, and hopefully they're coming to you too proactively, but ask them what's working best for their clients. What are the top performing channels for the previous year? And of those channels, which ones have you not really experimented with? And should you maybe put an experimental budget towards in the year ahead? So I would just say, everything we've talked about as far as developing marketing plans thus far has been spot on, but it's also really important to, know what you don't know, so to speak, and tap into your network to kind of get a broader sense of what's out there and what may be a good opportunity for your firm.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And so, speaking of Marketing for Justice, fantastic organization, a ton of really great, engaging workshops and everything you do. Let everybody know how they can learn more about Marketing for Justice, and how they can, get involved and get access to a lot of the great stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks, John. You can go to marketingforjustice.com. We are, like I said, an online marketing education membership group, essentially, for legal marketers. So it's both in-house marketers working on behalf of law firms, and also attorneys, managing partners, or attorneys that are responsible for marketing at their firms. It's a great group. It's a tight-knit group. And basically what we do is we come together every month for an online workshop focused on a specific channel or strategy in digital marketing. John, you've actually hosted several workshops for us. They're phenomenal. We really try to take a conversational approach. So it's not just a talking head lecturing at you. It's a dialogue. It's a conversation, bringing together marketers to really learn from each other. And again, know what we don't know, and kind of go from there. And then we also offer, an on-demand video library with all of the trainings we've done in the past. There's a private, membership group online where you can, seek out help and support from other marketers. And then what I think is really cool that we added in the last year is these Friday roundtable conversations or group coaching calls, where you can hop on. It's sort of like a working lunch. Essentially, it's a Zoom meeting where we just hop on and we celebrate some wins from the week, but we also close out the week by helping each other troubleshoot and problem solve some of the biggest challenges that we're facing in our day-to-day regarding marketing for our firm. So that's enough. If you want to learn more, I'd encourage you to go to marketingforjustice.com or marketingforjustice.com/membership and learn more about that. If you have any questions related to joining, or you're interested but you're on the fence, shoot me an email at dan@marketingforjustice.com, and I'd love to hop on Zoom and talk with you about how we might be able to get you involved. But yeah, I really appreciate you giving me a platform for that, John. And you guys have been so great to work with and partner with on that. I would say that, like, Marketing for Justice, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without the partnership with agencies like Spotlight Branding. So I appreciate everything that you've done to help us out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, like genuinely, like, I do a lot of presentations for, bar associations. I've done joint webinars with other companies, and like the engagement and just the participation that I get with the Marketing for Justice workshops is far and away, so much bigger than any other, and not to dump on, the other organizations that I've worked with. It's just I like Dan has really built something special with this group. And if you haven't joined, if you haven't checked out a workshop, I do highly recommend it, because it's a lot of great people over there. Who are
Oh
just
man, you just made my heart so happy. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send you the recording of this. You can make it a little video testimonial out of it. But
Fair enough. I love
no,
it.
but yeah, it is a really great group, and I highly recommend everyone go and check it out. But other than that, I think that's going to wrap it up. I do have a final question for you. It is our
Sure.
general question. I've slipped up in a couple of episodes, and I've completely forgotten to ask it. This is what happens when I go like 3 months without recording an episode, because I get so far ahead, I get rusty. But I've got it here, and that's, if you had one final piece of advice for our audience, what would it be?
Oof. Well, I mean, the big thing I wanted to come in here today and share was what I said earlier, which is that, tap into your network.
Yeah.
Ask your partners for what their own, if you're working with an agency, what would be their wish list for the year ahead? Not to say that you have to go with their recommendation every time, but just kind of get a sense of what's out there and what the opportunities might be. But I guess if I were to say one other thing, if there's one more thing I want to share, it would be, know where your leads are coming from. Know your lead attribution. If you don't have the right tracking in place or the right lead attribution in place, and you can work with an agency to help get that set up, it can be a little bit tricky. But make use of call tracking numbers, make use of form tracking, know where your leads are coming from, know which channels are actually producing qualified leads and generating signed cases. If you don't have your lead attribution nailed down, you're never going to be able to create an effective marketing plan. It's the brutal reality. And so before you approach this, I know we've given you a lot of homework today, but before you approach this, make sure that you really have a sense of where your leads are coming from, what channels are producing them, and what's ultimately driving your signed cases. Because without knowing what's working, you're not going to be able to know how to make it any better. It's just as simple
Yeah.
as that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And whatever practice management software you're using, whether it's Clio, Practice Panther, Rocket Matter, MyCase, whatever it is, they should have that ability. If it's not on by default, you should be able to create a custom field that allows you to input, the lead source, or or attribution, whatever you want to call it, right in there, so where your people are coming from, and you can generate that data very easily. So great point there. And I think that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you all for continuing to listen. Please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever else you're consuming the show. We really do appreciate it. And that's it. Dan, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks so much, John. It was great to be here.
Thanks for listening. To learn more, go to spotlightbranding.com/center stage.